Hello and welcome to the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast made for fans, by fans, and where the content is absolutely free. If you haven't already, please share the podcast where you can. Give us a like on our social media platforms. We're coming to you after another positive weekend for the club. 5-0 victory over Ross County in the Premiership yesterday. That takes our lead at the top of the table to 23 points. 5 different scorers in what proved to be a pretty easy day at the office, and kept unbeaten running the league going. So we're going to look at all of that. We've quite a lot to go through tonight. We're going to look at the big moments from yesterday's game as well as the other talking points. And it's been another busy week in Scottish football. I'm your host, David Wren. Joining me tonight is my fellow host, Colin Armstrong, and the gaffer, Frankie, is joining us tonight. Colin, how are you doing?
David, I'm doing well. Doing well. Very good result yesterday. Nice weather. Been out for a couple of walks, so
good.
All good, I suppose.
I see you've got the numbers in your clock behind you, just so you know what time it is. Written out.
I can't tell the time. I've got my digital watch to tell me the time. That's just there for effect.
Yeah, it actually looks like some of them are in writing and the others aren't. But anyway, enough about your clock, Frankie.
It's very nice. It's very trendy. I think it's very trendy.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It's as trendy as that polo shirt. Frankie, speaking of polo shirts, Frankie, that's a magnificent polo shirt you've got on.
It's very, very good. All the
I think you're still muted there.
I'm up. Should be okay now. Well, wait now. You know what is
right? We're not getting in from Frankie there.
You'll get it here through here. Everybody else can hear me. It's just because I'd muted myself in the Zoom. It's my fault. In terms of the polo shirt, all the good contributors and important people at Gersnet get a polo shirt and get to wear them during the pod. So I've got one on.
Yeah, clearly I'm not getting one now after that. After not realising you were off mute. So anyway, we'll move on to yesterday's game. It was a fantastic result, Colin. Obviously, I think even going into it, John Hughes had led led Ross County to a victory over Aberdeen last week. And it could have been tricky, but they did well, and it started fast as well.
Yeah, a great performance. I thought there was, speaking of Aberdeen, I thought there was wee hints against Aberdeen at Pittodrie that Rangers were starting to get back into that sort of early season groove, the movement off the ball, some of the sort of 1-2. I thought we played well at Pittodrie, even though the result last week wasn't the best. We drew at Motherwell. Again, I thought there were signs that we were coming back to our sort of best. And it all came together yesterday. As you said, it could have been a tricky game. Ross County were quite tricky at Ibrox earlier in the season. But we're blowing them away. And, Kent looked like he was back to his best. Aribo's goal was just, I thought that was the moment of the day. But don't get me wrong, Ryan Jack's goal was a good goal as well. But I thought Aribo's was just an absolute peach. Players coming back, Jack on the bench and coming on and getting a goal. Roof on the bench. So, I don't think you could have a more perfect day. We've extended the points difference. We've extended our goal difference. And we're starting to look like we're getting back into the groove, and it's coming at the right time because we've got a tricky game on Wednesday. So as positive a day as you could ask for, in my opinion.
You mentioned there in terms of the performance overall, but there was signs in the Motherwell game and Aberdeen game as well where we sort of dropped off, but it didn't really seem to happen yesterday.
No, well, I think Gerrard had said that in his press conference on Friday. He thought we tailed off in the Aberdeen game. We started really well, kind of tailed off. And the opposite happened last week at Fir Park. We've came to the game late. I thought the second half, I think it's always the same when Rangers get a sort of a draw or a defeat. The reaction online is always pretty severe. But I thought the performance last week, especially in the second half, was really good. And I thought we were unlucky not to win the game. As Gerrard said after the game yesterday, he was asking for a 90-minute performance, and he got that yesterday. From beginning to end, we got the early goal that settled us. I've been kind of thinking about the game today, and obviously Ryan Jack came on first game in a while, and Roof was on the bench, and I have the feeling that Roof was maybe told, look, you'll only get on if we're struggling for goals. We'll maybe bring you on last 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes if we're struggling to win the game. If we're coasting it, then you'll not get on, which means, after half an hour, he knew he wasn't coming on because we were just so far in front. And we'd missed the penalty as well. Kent had hit the post, missed the penalty. and we're still 3-0 up at half time. So again, great to see us back in that type of form. It feels like it's been a wee while, and it's all good. And if it continues at this rate, then it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, Frankie, Colin mentioned, about the performance overall, but it was good to see Ryan Kent get the goal. He had a difficult week against Motherwell. I think everyone could see that, and you could see how much the goal went to him once he scored, and it was an unconventional Ryan Kent goal.
Aye, it was. It's not often you'll see Ryan Kent score a header, but he took it very, very well. It was a good goal, actually. It was a good ball in with Tavi, went a bit vertical, a bit direct. Morelos had two defenders to deal with, and just he put it down really well. But Kent's decision making was excellent at that point. It's one flaw I think he's got, but in this occasion he did the right thing to try and loop the header, because if he tried to wait it, bring it down and hit it with his feet, then it would have been, the defender would have got back. Reboyd actually made a good run into the channel to take that other central defender away and create a bit of space centrally. But Kent, I mean, the whole game yesterday, he was just getting a bit more into the box, and I think recently he's sort of been playing behind defences, or sort of in front of defences, and in fact in front of some midfields. He's been coming really deep with the ball. I think yesterday he seemed to be instructed to be a bit more further forward and to have a bit of a freer role, and he seemed to enjoy it. And then when you could see right away that he was delighted with the goal, and it's excellent for his confidence. I mean, the fans have been fairly critical there lately, and that's probably fair enough. I think he's been a bit inconsistent. I did actually think he was our best player against Aberdeen the other week, and and I thought he started the game last week at Motherwell quite well, and then tended to fall out, unfortunately. But it was great to see him do the business yesterday. And I mean, the first goal just was got him off to a flyer and got us off to a flyer, and it's a big help when that happens. And it just means that teams, if they're starting to think about sitting in, they can't do it. And it allows us to play with a bit more freedom and a bit more confidence. And as I said, Kent benefited from that more than most, and he was arguably the man of the match, and certainly got our forum as man of the match.
Yeah, Colin, we'll come on to the penalty later on in terms of the overall picture of that, but for Philip Hollander to get a goal, and also from a corner, we're scoring. We're not just scoring normal sort of open play goals. We're getting a lot of goals from set pieces this season as well.
Yeah, set pieces are a big part of what Rangers are about. When you've got people like Tavernier and Barisic, then you have to try and make use of that. So yeah, I mean, it was good to see Hollander get his goal yesterday, because he got the positive COVID test a wee while back, and he's kind of not really had a run in the team since then, and you kind of wonder if he's maybe struggled to shake that off completely. And Balogun's been playing quite well, but he got a wee bit of stick last week for Motherwell's goal about his positioning and all that kind of a thing. And I think that's one thing that Hollander does have. He's good positionally. He's not the quickest. He's not got the pace that Balogun's got, but he's certainly good at positioning himself and reading the game so that he doesn't get into tricky situations. In terms of the goal, I don't want to do Ross County a disservice here, but it looked really easy. You know what I mean? He kind of lost his marker. His marker, I think he was looking for a foul, but he just kind of went to ground. He's in a free man, and he just has to meet it and put it across the other way from where the keeper is. So good to see him get it, and it's good to see the goals getting shared around the team. I think that's a criticism that's been aimed at Rangers, including from ourselves. That last season we were really reliant, or probably over reliant on Morelos and what he was bringing to the team in terms of goals. So 5-0, 5 different goal scorers. Tavernier's chipped in with a lot of goals this season. Goldson got a goal yesterday. He's chipped in with a lot. Hadji's chipped in. Kent's chipped in. So it's good that we're not too reliant on maybe one or two core players. So it's the most relaxed I've felt watching a Rangers game for a while. The last few over sort of December and January have probably been the most nervous I've felt for a while watching games. Yesterday, I was up at Hull yesterday, so I got in just before kick-off. And within half an hour, the boots were off and the feet were up, and I was quite relaxed about the whole thing. So it was nice to have a game like that for a wee while, because I think my nerves could take any more of the sort of last 3 or 4 weeks, to be honest with you.
Frankie, you mentioned Kent's sort of position yesterday and maybe the instruction he'd been given, but another player that was making the difference in the forward area was Joe Aribo. And it looked as if he'd been sort of given free rein to get up the pitch yesterday, whereas perhaps in the past few games he's been more, central. But I mean, you can't. The individual brilliance of that third goal was quite unbelievable.
Aye, they were so fluid yesterday. Actually, it was difficult to even guess the formation at times. I mean, I kind of thought we would move to more of a 4-2-3-1 just because of what happened at Motherwell. So I was pretty confident that Aribo would play a bit further forward. However, in some ways it was actually more of a 4-1-4-1 at times, because both Aribo or it was sometimes Hadji were pulling it to the right hand side. So it was more like a sort of attacking four just in behind Morelos. But even then, you had Hadji breaking up beside Morelos, you had Kent breaking in behind, Aribo was doing it as well, so it was much more fluid. I do think that came, obviously, for a certain extent, for the way Ross County played. They were fairly open and certainly trying to get forward. They weren't like Motherwell sitting back and playing with two banks of five or two banks of four. But and I also think the early goal and certainly the second goal allowed us to play with that bit more freedom and a bit more confidence. We didn't have to really worry about keeping the door locked at the back. I mean, county to their due, there wasn't any clear-cut opportunities for them in the first half, but there was one or two balls in behind into the channel that I wouldn't say we struggled, but the threat was there if we weren't careful. But generally speaking, we just dominated Ross County completely, other than possibly 5 or 6 minutes after half time where County they hit the bar and they hit the post. But in terms of Aribo, as I say, the goal just topped it off. I mean, his play was excellent. I do think he could move the ball a wee bit quicker at times. I don't think he was the only player guilty of that yesterday in the first half. I think there's just sometimes we play an extra pass just when I think there's a more direct pass on. I thought Kamara was a wee bit guilty of that at times yesterday. But I mean, it's nitpicking really. When you win 5-0, you can't really complain too much, especially after the result last week, and that's been a feature of our season actually. Is in previous years we've maybe not responded well to bad results or disappointments, but this season we have. Whenever we drew against Livingston and Hibs and now Motherwell, and it's St Mirren as well, obviously in the cup, we've went on good winning runs after that and won the game immediately after it for sure. So it's great. Everything's going really well, and I mean, if you can get Kent, Morelos, Aribo, Hadji, I mean, you're talking Roof and Itten and guys like that. If you can get your front four and your front five players all playing quite well, there's no many teams in the Scottish League certainly that can live with that. And that was a difference this week compared to the first part last week. The front players played well, were dangerous and worked well, linked well together, were very fluid, and that's what effectively won us the game.
Yeah, and Colin, I think, as Frankie mentioned there, that sort of opening 10 minutes, 15 minutes of the second half, we sort of gave up a few chances, but to be fair to County, I thought they came out, and had a go. I don't think they were going to be able to keep that level up, and I think once we clicked back into gear, and obviously Brian Jack coming on was pleasing, because even though that's been a position which, has been a bit overloaded in recent years, we've certainly missed his calming presence in games, and I think there's been quite a big expectation on Davis and Kamara, so it's good to have him back and scoring one of the best goals of the season, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it gets a lot of stick sometimes, Ryan Jack, and certainly where I sit, there's a couple of boys that are fairly unconvinced by him, but I think what he does for the team is it's instrumental in how we operate and how we do what we do. I also think him coming back, I mean, obviously he got his goal, which was great to see, but I think it helps, and Stephen Davis as well, because he's probably been playing too much football of late. You know what I mean? And he's played well and he's got through it and all the rest of it, but I think Steven Gerrard and Stephen Davis himself would say that if all being as it should have been, he wouldn't have played as much football as he's played this season. He's 36 years of age now. He's probably at the stage of his career when he needs to be managed a wee bit in terms of minutes on the park. And we've not been able to do that. He's had to churn it out for the last sort of 2.5 months. So it's also good in that respect that we can manage Davis a bit better and give him a rest when he needs it. So yeah, great to see him back. Great to see him scoring. I think he offers a wee bit more protection to the back four than maybe anyone else in that position. And I think he uses the ball very well once he gets it. So yeah, it just felt yesterday that I think we all looked at December and January and sort of thought, well, these are going to be 2 crucial months. There was some heavy fixtures in there. Obviously, we had the Celtic game, Aberdeen. We've got Hibs at Pittodrie. Hibs at Easter Road on Wednesday. Sorry. So everybody was saying after we beat Celtic and the 2nd of January there, that was it. But I was always a wee bit more, what, I'd rather see where we are come February, and then I'll feel a lot more confident. So to be approaching that stage, having got through December and January unscathed, really, a couple of draws, I think that was about it. Obviously, we had the League Cup disappointment, but in terms of the league, we're fine. The players that have been out, Roof's, back at full training, and he was on the bench yesterday. Jack's back in the team; he's came on yesterday, and apparently Scott Arfield has really picked up his rehabilitation. So all these players are coming back at the right time for us just to make that, and it kind of feels like the final push. We've got 13 games to go. I think we need to win 9 of those, and that's if Celtic win all their games, which you would have to say if they continue their current form, isn't going to happen. They've got a few tricky fixtures coming up as well. So I mean, realistically, we could be, all going well, we could be sort of 6-7 games away for the title. So it feels like we've came through a really important stage of the season, and it's all coming together now. We've got through that, players are coming back, and we're in a really, really good position for this sort of final push.
Yeah, obviously Connor Goldson added the 5th goal yesterday, Frankie. But one thing I want to touch on, James Tavernier obviously at 1-0 misses the penalty. 2nd in a row that he's missed. I don't think anyone can argue with the amount he scored this season, but if you were a fellow penalty taker in that squad, do you think there'll be some people that will be potentially looking to maybe get the next one?
Aye, I don't see why not. I mean, that's healthy. I think if you're getting penalties, you really have to score them. You can't afford to miss penalties very often. I mean, it's difficult to be critical of Tav. I mean, he missed, what was it, 2 last season and 2 this season. Out of what? I mean, I don't know. Best part of 20 penalties. It isn't a bad rate. I mean, he's obviously no Johnny Hubbard, but I think that the penalty against Aberdeen wasn't his best, and then the one yesterday, I kind of must admit, usually I'm fairly confident with Tav, but he didn't look that confident yesterday before it, and he didn't hit it well. One thing he usually does is he does usually hit them very well, and yesterday he didn't really catch it right at all, and so I don't know. I don't know if he'll take the next one or not. In terms of a replacement, we've got plenty of guys that hit the ball well. I'd be quite happy, for example, even with Barisic hitting it. You've got a Roof, you've got Hadji, I'm sure would take a good penalty. Fairly confident Ryan Kent, Joe Aribo, all these guys could take a good penalty. So I didn't have any worries about anybody else stepping up. I'd be quite happy though if Tav takes the next one. It would be nice to get one in a comfortable situation where it's not a crucial penalty. I mean, 0-0 away to Hibs and get a penalty in the last 5 minutes at Easter Road on Wednesday, and it would be a bit more worrying than if you're 4-0 up in the game, obviously. So I'm not overly worried about it. And I'm, as I say, confident in anybody else doing it, and I don't think there'll be big issues in the squad in terms of anybody taking the cream puff if they didn't get a chance.
Yeah, Colin, that victory yesterday, as I said at the top of the show, that takes us 23 points clear of Celtic. They obviously still have a couple of games in hand, but it's been quite the week again in Scottish football. Obviously with the Neil Lennon press conference on Monday, and then they dropped points again on Wednesday. And then there was the sort of Kenny McIntyre interview before the game on Wednesday, and it seems to be it's a strange old time again in Scottish football, but for us it's been quite, the silence coming from Ibrox has been quite noticeable this season compared to some previous years.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. You know what I mean? It's good to know that the chaos is over at the other side of the road. But having said that, I think some of the stuff that has happened over the other side of the road has maybe proven that Rangers are right to come out with statements at certain times, because, if you think about Steven Gerrard, he made a comment, I can't remember what the game was, but he made a comment about, if Alfredo Morelos makes that challenge, it's a red card kind of thing, and he was charged. Now, I think he was found not guilty in the charge, but the fact was he was retrospectively charged by the compliance officer. Now, in the last month, Neil Lennon's criticised the referee at the Old Firm game for some of his decisions in that game. We've had the absolute farce that was Dubai, and John Kennedy coming out and admitting that Celtic had broken some of the COVID protocols. No charge for that either. And then we've had Neil Lennon's absolute, he's went for everybody, really. He's went for the Scottish Government, he's went for Hamilton, he's went for St Johnstone, he's went for the media, he's went for everybody. And, at the very least, he's brought the game into disrepute there, and we're still waiting on a charge. So, when Rangers were coming out with statements, it was quite frustrating, and I think even most Rangers supporters were getting bored with them. You know what I mean? But when you see stuff like this happening, don't get me wrong, it's funny seeing what's happening over the other side of the road, and we're all enjoying it. But you do have to ask questions as to why people can make the statements that Neil Lennon's made, that John Kennedy's made, and there's no comeback. The only thing that came out of Celtic admitting that they'd broken the protocols around COVID was that St Mirren and Kilmarnock got let off with their charges. It was like, right, well, obviously we can't charge them because Celtic have admitted that they've broken protocols in Dubai. Ian Maxwell's already come out and said that there's no case to answer. So there was no way they could push forward with St Mirren and Kilmarnock and punish them. So it's another bizarre week. I think it does highlight, even though it's running our way at the moment, I think it does highlight that there are serious issues in terms of the governance of our game. I think, you see some of the statements from Stenish Muir, from Falkirk, from Partick Thistle. Peter Law saying that Celtic are the club that's most impacted by this pandemic was almost laughable. Because you think of the clubs like Hearts, Partick and all those clubs that were relegated without finishing the season. So again, it's all good for us at the moment, and it's enjoyable, and we can all have a laugh and all the rest of it, and I have been, but it still highlights that there are serious issues in their game in terms of the governance, in terms of the decision making, in terms of the consistency of that decision making, and who gets hauled over the coals and who doesn't. So it's fun, but I think some points have come out that back up some of the statements that we've issued in the past.
Yeah, Frankie, it's sort of been it's not only has it been, on the park for us that things seem to have not only settled down, but become quite a slick operation. And, we mentioned a couple of weeks ago about the masks during the interviews and stuff like that, but it was even noted on, I was listening to Sports Sound through the week, and I think it was Tom English was speaking about the two clubs and how, Celtic are coming out with some crazy sound bites, yet Rangers are silent. You don't hear a word, and everything that's happening at Rangers appears to be going well and on the pitch and off it. It's been quite satisfying from a Rangers fan point of view to see the way our club is now operating. As I say, both on the pitch and off it.
Aye, after what's happened in the last 8-9 years, all Rangers were ever doing was firefighting. So it always seems like you're having to make statements about something, whether it's whoever's running the club, whoever's joining the board, leaving the board, what court action's happening, what's happening with Mike Ashley, Sports Direct. It's not a surprise. You look like a basket case, and Rangers were a basket case. There's no doubt about it. So, even when the Three Bears and Dave King takes over 2015, there's still a lot of work to be done. So there's still a lot of statements to be said, and it's never good or healthy for a business to be doing that. Of course, you want to be open and transparent with fans, but you didn't want to be looking daft and saying the wrong things. And Celtic's definitely been doing that lately. I'm really surprised at how many own goals they're scoring with that, and it's great that we didn't need to say a thing. There's nothing Rangers need to be saying right now. We're doing everything and doing all our talking on the park. We're not doing anything wrong in terms of the COVID stuff. The club's well run, that the fans are happy, that the signings have been good, the management's good. We're quite happy with Ross Wilson. We seem to be happy with the scouting. So there isn't anything really going wrong at this stage. So, and whereas obviously the opposite's happening at Parkhead or at Sharkhead or whatever you want to call it nowadays. And it's great to see, because as I say, we've been on the receiving end now for a long time. Now it's Celtic that seem to be embarrassing themselves on a day-to-day basis. I mean, Lennon's presser the other day there was incredible stuff. Really, honestly, it was really, really strange and bordering on the mental. And it's been interesting that Colin made the point that the SPFL or the SFA haven't taken him to task on that. Obviously, the only thing that seems to have come out of it actually is that there's the SFA have went to the joint response group with the government and the other authorities to see if there is any with teams and change rooms and stuff like that. And I think that might well be a reaction to what Lennon said. If they can go back to the other ones and if they can go back to the other clubs and prove that there's nothing wrong, then they can go back and charge Lennon for his comments. So it might well be that's what's happening there. But generally speaking, we're quite happy. Everything's going well, and if it's Celtic making an arse of themselves, well, all the better as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Colin, just before we move on from this point, it's quite interesting to note that the lower league clubs are now, pleading with SFA to be able to resume playing, and they're going to carry out testing. They seem to be an unfortunate victim of the full sort of Dubai charade.
Yeah, and that's the main thing, isn't it? Really, that football at that level, needs fans in. And obviously even with COVID, they're not going to get them in. But they'll be doing their. I mean, even Cayman Juniors are doing a live stream for games, so you pay a £5, you get to watch the game. So I'm assuming all your lower clubs will be doing that. But if there's no games, they can't do that. They can't offer a live stream and try and help their turnover and all that kind of a thing. So it is, and it's at that end. We will feel it at the top end. I think Celtic are feeling it at the moment, and I think there was a statement last week surrounding Rangers, that there's going to be a funding gap that needs to be dealt with. No football clubs are going to get through this unscathed, but down at that end, yeah, it's pretty tough, because they pretty much rely on match day income and supporters coming through the turnstiles, buying their programmes, pies, bovrils, all that kind of a thing. Without that, they don't have anything. So it does seem unfair that a club that was having a jolly out to Dubai has resulted in them being told that they can't play football anymore. So yeah, it's a tricky one, because we have to remember it is what it is. We're in the midst of a public health crisis. It's as serious as much as I see many people on social media saying that we should just be out and about and doing everything that we should be doing. As someone who's my wife's a nurse, and some of the stories that she comes back with tells me that that's not the case. We shouldn't have been going back to normal, because the NHS is struggling to cope with this. So if we all go back to normal, then it would just collapse under the strain of it. So it's a serious issue, but you do feel for clubs at the lower end for being punished for the actions of a top elite football club. You know what I mean? And it's no fair. There's no other way of putting it. It's not fair. And if possible, I think we should try and find a way around it. I mean, is there any data suggesting that football's an issue, in terms of young athletes travelling around the country? I don't know. If there is, then maybe at that level of the game, when there's not as much testing, they shouldn't be doing it. But it feels rough that they're the ones that have bore the brunt of this. You know what I mean? And Celtic have sailed through this. I mean, they're 23 points behind and all the rest of it. But the actual stushing that came out from the press conference and from that Dubai trip, they've come out of it without any issues. They're not getting hauled over the coals. Obviously, they've got a couple of players positive, but other than that, they've got away with it scot-free.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll move on from that. Steven Gerrard, 150th game in charge yesterday. I mean, it couldn't have gone any better, really, when you look at the result and the performance. But quickest manager, Colin, the fastest ever Rangers manager to reach that feat. 150 games. Rangers did quite a nice social media video yesterday with some young My Girls members which then at the end Walter Smith came on, which was quite entertaining. It was all little boys and girls saying, "Well done, Stephen." Then Walter Smith appeared at the end and had a few nice words to say. But I think just first of all, Colin, I mean, it's difficult to really put into words sort of how things have changed over the past, 2.5 years. Because when Gerrard came in, that was arguably the lowest we'd been. Really, when you think about it, and you think of the signings that, like even bringing in Bruno Alves in that last season, 2017-18 and stuff like that, the money we spent, I felt like we were maybe going somewhere, but that end of that season was perhaps the lowest that I'd felt as a fan, because at that point you just didn't know, where we were going and what we were doing, and we'd taken 2 absolute hammerings off Celtic within a matter of weeks at the tail end of that season. The players we had didn't really seem like they were going to work. Honest pros like Russell Martin and Graham Dorrans and things like that, we couldn't get near Celtic. Gerrard came in, there was a famous quote of he looked quietly terrified. But, wow, what an impact he's made.
Yeah, and I think, he has had critics within the Rangers support. I think they maybe need to now accept that the job that he had to do was far greater than any is sort of imagined. There was a game came on through the week. I'm sitting on my couch through the week there, and the game where Celtic won the league against us, the 5-0 game. And I found myself, all right, I'll sit and watch this just to sort of try and remind myself where we were. And without a word of a lie, it could have been 7 or 8 that day. They absolutely pummeled us. And I can remember that day. And, at various points in this journey back up, I have genuinely thought to myself, well, this is it. We're never coming back. We're just not coming back. I can remember being at Ibrox. I think we got beat by Annan at Ibrox when we were in the old 3rd division. And I'm always someone that stays for the 90 minutes, but I left when the second goal went and I just couldn't take any more of it. And I remember I went back into Glasgow, pint with my mate, and I said then, I said, I think that's us, mate. I just can't see us ever coming back. I was at Easter Road the day Wraith Rovers beat us in the petrol fact, or the Ramsdens, or whatever it was at that particular time. And the boy I was with that day, we stopped for a chippy tea on the way back. We were coming back to Edinburgh and we pulled in, had a sit down chippy tea. And there was a couple of Rangers fans sitting across from us, and we were all at that. Just can't see us ever coming back. This is how it's going to be from now on. I was at Forfar the day they put us out of the League Cup. Same again, coming home thinking that's us. And then we get back. We do eventually. Warburton came in. We got a wee lift with him. We played some brilliant stuff under him in the Championship. We get back into the top flight, and it starts to go a bit pear-shaped again. And that day, that sort of 5-0, you're just like, where the hell are we going to go from here? There just didn't seem any way out of it. Brendan Rodgers was in charge of Celtic at the time. They just looked, like, it didn't look like they were going to win 10 in a row. It looked like it could be, 12, 13, 14, 15, you name it. It just didn't seem like it was going to be any end to it. And Steven Gerrard changed all that. He's come in and, the one criticism he'll probably get is 150 games without a trophy. But I think the work in terms of the infrastructure, everything at Ibrox, everything at the training facility, I don't want to say Murray Park, Auchenhowie, sorry, all that stuff had sort of fallen away into an unacceptable state, and Gerrard's had to come in and build everything up. Now, the first thing he does, in my opinion, is just lifts the place. He's a renowned global sort of superstar when it comes to football. The minute he walks through the door, he lifts the place and he makes people believe. Now, he's had dunts along the way. The first season, his first game, it was a draw, and then we got the draw at Motherwell in the second game, and he went to Celtic Park and we got beat 1-0. But even in those early stages, you could see there was an improvement. Europe is just another level altogether. He's made us, for day one, he's made us a different animal in that arena. So yeah, as I said, the only criticism you could probably level is we've not won a trophy yet. But overall, the job he's done is fantastic, and I genuinely can't think of anyone else who could have come in and done what he's done. He's not only improved us as a team, he's improved us as a business. By constantly getting into Europe, by getting into the sort of out the group stages and into the sort of latter stages of European tournaments, he's increasing the turnover of the club, meaning we can get better players in. It's hard to put into words what he's done for Rangers Football Club, and I will forever love him because of that.
Frankie, I'm curious because when Gerrard was announced, Colin said it gave the place a lift when he came in. I remember when he was linked with the job, and then when he got the job, I was absolutely delighted. I just thought it was a great move, in terms of he was a rookie manager, but it just felt like it was a bit the closest we could get to getting someone massive or a massive name in. Can you remember what your first thoughts were? Did you think that he would be, well, first of all, just a success in general?
I was hopeful, but who could be certain of anything? The best thing about Steven Gerrard is, like you've both mentioned it, he's a global name. He's a footballing icon in terms of the modern era. There isn't any very many bigger. The only doubt you had about him was his inexperience. But in terms of his mindset, his psychology, he just reminds me so much of Graham Souness, and we all know what happened back then in the 1980s. So that's what I was kind of hoping from Gerrard, and I think it's safe to say, okay, the success has to come right away. I think it's arguable whether Gerrard had a bigger job than what Souness had. We had to change the club and improve the club probably a lot more than we did when Souness arrived, and we didn't probably have the money or the initial backing and able to do it sort of wholesale right away, and it's taken a bit of time. Gerrard himself alluded to that. He reckoned it would take 3, maybe 4 years, and I think that timeline has probably been proven correct. There's been times where it would be easy to say he was the wrong appointment. I think if you go back to probably this time last year, and when we got beat against Hearts in the Scottish Cup at Tynecastle, and you're kind of thinking, is this game over for Gerrard? Is he on his way out? And it could be argued that what happened with the pandemic maybe saved him in that respect, because I'm not entirely sure whether he could have turned it around again for the rest of that season. But this season he definitely has, and nobody can argue about the progress year on year. The only argument you've got is that he hasn't delivered any trophies, and we have let ourselves down in the cups. That Hearts game was one of them. Even this season, obviously the St Mirren game, and then the League Cup final last year against Celtic, a year past December, we absolutely dominated them. Missed another penalty. Obviously it was Morelos that time, and we didn't go on to win. It was an offside goal, but at the same time we never took our chances. So that's the way the cookie crumbles, and it's amazing how in the last 6 months how we've been able to turn that around from where we were, as I say, a year ago, and to go unbeaten this season is fantastic. 25 games unbeaten in the league, 100% record at Ibrox. What is it in the league? 65 goals scored, 7 against. That's incredible numbers. Really is unreal to do that for where we are. Let's remember where we were a year ago before the pandemic arrived. We were struggling badly against all teams. We were getting beat by Hamilton at home, getting hammered by Hearts in the Cup, and just no looking interested. It's amazing how they've managed to turn that round, and all credit to Gerrard and the rest of his staff for doing it. And it's been probably a longer journey under Gerrard than many of us might have hoped, but it hasn't really surprised me, and I'm just glad that we've stuck by him, and the board have stuck by him, and it's looking like a huge muck-up aside that success is now imminent, and I just hope that he can deliver the Scottish Cup as well as the league. And there's no reason why we can't go further in the Europa League as well, and what a season it could turn out to be, and we're capable of a lot. You watch this Rangers team, they're a fantastic team. They play great football. It's really exciting to watch. December, I think we were all a bit worried about the amount of games. This month's been slightly quieter, but it's been hellish actually waiting for 7-8 days to the next game. You just want to watch as Rangers play, or the team play as often as possible, because they're so good to watch. And I mentioned Souness, you can go back to Walter Smith, Advocaat, any of these managers, and Gerrard's team and style of play is as good as any of them, if not better. And we can only hope that if we can go in and win this league this year, that we go from strength to strength in future years.
Yeah, Colin, I mean, you look at it's not just on the pitch and the way he's improved is there. I feel like the full reputation of the club and the way we're seen by the wider football community is improved, and I think he's played a massive part in that over the last 2 years as well.
Yeah, I mean, there was some stuff on Radio Scotland about him yesterday. I was coming back from a walk, and I think it was Tom English had made a comment that, in his first game against Aberdeen, after the game he came out and sort of had a pop at the referee and sort of said, Rangers don't get decisions and all this kind of a thing. And Tom English claimed that he knew a friend of a friend who had said to him that he almost instantly regretted making that statement, and he was told to say that by the club. Part of me thinks that could have happened, but part of me thinks that maybe Gerrard wanted just to lay down a marker as well and say, look, I'm here, and some of the nonsense that's went on before, we're not going to accept that. But there's a really good podcast with Steven Gerrard, and I would recommend anyone to listen to it. I think it's the High Performance podcast, and it really gives an insight into him and how he works, and what Frankie's just said there about the year-on-year improvement. That's all he talks about in this podcast. He talks about how if something goes wrong and it goes through an experience and it doesn't work, he learns from it and then goes again. And you would have to say that's been borne out. You know what I mean? When something goes wrong, if it's on the part, he fixes it and we go again. But there's also, I think, how he celebrated the win against Celtic there at Ibrox a couple of weeks ago or 2-3 weeks ago, compared to how he celebrated at Celtic Park. I think he's been stung with that, because it was a huge game to win at Celtic Park. We hadn't won there for about 9 years, something like that. So that's a big statement. That's another thing that's ticked off in terms of the improvement of the club. And he's done the face into the camera thing, and then after a few weeks later, things have went a bit south, and he's got to eat humble pie. And so this year, there's been none of that, and he keeps on talking about how that we have to be humble, and there's no celebrations. We're not celebrating anything until we're over the line. All those things are maybe stuff that Rangers haven't been great at in the past. You know what I mean? Including us as supporters. So yeah, I think him coming in and having that slight tweak in the attitude has helped. It has helped in terms of our image to the wider world. I find Gerrard a fascinating character. There's a real human element to him. I think a lot of football players just look like, like super beings that aren't affected by anything. There's an emotional aspect to Gerrard that I think is quite interesting, that you can see that he's not just a world-class football player. He's also a human being, and things affect him. And I think we might get the benefit of, the slip. I think that's haunted him since it happened. I mean, you think his career, he won the Champions League, he's won the FA Cup, he's won this, he's won that, but obviously the one he never got was the Premier League. He was close to it that year. Any interviews I've heard of him recently, he always talks about that moment, and he thinks it was cruel and he didn't deserve it. And to me, it haunts him, and to me, it makes him driven to get a league title. And it looks like he's within 6-7 games of it now. So we're probably going to get the benefit of that. He's failed at something, he's learned from it, and he wants to go again, and he wants to achieve it. And it's working for us at the moment. I think he's made the club. It's almost like a totally different club for the one that he came into. You know what I mean? We were a total. I think Frankie used the right term there. A basket case. We were an absolute basket case of a club, and now the case has been passed over to the other end of the city, and we look quite normal and sensible by comparison.
Yeah, and Frankie, just on Gerrard finally, in terms of this team that he's built over the space of 3 seasons, you look at guys like Goldson, Tavernier. Obviously Tavernier was here, but he's been a massive part of it. Ryan Kent, Morelos. How do you see this Gerrard team evolving, and do you think that if we do go on and win the league, do you think this will be the end of the cycle for this team? You might see a few leave in the summer, and then there'd be a bit of a recruitment drive to then build the second Gerrard team to take us into the future years, or do you think you'll try and keep some of the guys that are already there?
It's a good question, actually, David. I'm not entirely sure. I think Gerrard would like to try and keep his trusted lieutenants, if you like. I mean, guys like Goldson, Kamara, Jack, Barisic, Tav, Morelos, all these guys have been incredibly important, obviously, over the last couple of years. And if you start getting rid of 5, 6, 7 players, then you really can leave it yourself in a difficult position, because I don't think any manager wants to bring in sort of 5, 6, 7 key players in one window. At the same time, Rangers need to make money. Their financials weren't fantastic, so we definitely need to try and move players on. So there is a sort of middle ground to be found. And by the same token, I mean, guys like Tav, 29 years old now, Balogun's 32. Do you looking for younger replacements at some point? I mean, you've got Nathan Patterson there, who incidentally I thought was excellent yesterday when he came on. I thought he had a really good game. So I think at some point you do want to try and get more players and newer players into the squad and freshen up your squad and keep that drive and hunger there. It's, as I say, that it's just a balance to be found, and I think players will leave. I don't know what players will leave in the summer, but I think 2 or 3 will go, especially if we didn't have the fans back for the start of next season. But I mean, obviously, whether or not we can qualify for the Champions League or at least the Europa League group stage is going to have a big factor on how much money we spend. We're going to come on to the transfer window in maybe 5 minutes or so and have a quick chat about the guys for Bournemouth that are coming. So clearly there's succession planning happening, not just in terms of the players, but I'm hoping in terms of the staff themselves. And as I say, I think we just need to find a balance. I don't have an issue with us selling players. I think we've got to do it. I think it's a model we have to explore. And I think as long as we've got other players coming in to replace them, then I'll be quite happy. But as long as it's not large scale or wholesale changes, and I don't think it will be, certainly this summer anyway.
Yeah, Colin, just before we move on from Gerrard, I'm just going to put you on the spot because, why not?
Why not?
You get three Gerrard games you could pinpoint over the last 2.5 years that have really stood out and will stand out for you going forward. Just 3.
Just the 3. I think the first one that meant a lot to me was qualifying for the group stages of the Europa League. So I think the first night was it Rapid Vienna was the first big night back at Ibrox. My son had never seen a European night like that before, and that was a special night. It had everything. 3-1. We didn't get the third goal until the last minute. We were 1-0 behind. Came home for that, and like my son was buzzing. He was used to Stennismuir and Wraith Rovers and all that kind of thing. So that was a big one. I think the 1-0 game against Celtic, Ryan Jack scored. That was another big one. That was a big turning point, the first time, and that was Brendan Rodgers' team. So that was a big statement to beat that particular Celtic side. And again, my son had seen us beat Celtic. He was at that semi-final when Warburton beat them. But, I don't think he'd seen anything since, and we'd been on the end of a couple of horsings, We were at the 5-1 game at Ibrox, and we sat there right to the end and took it. So I actually think that was the last game at Ibrox against them. So to go for getting pumped 5-1 to turning it around and beating them, that was a big statement. And if I was pushed for one more, trying to think of the European games, if I'm going to go for one more, although it never quite worked out in the long run, the 2-1 game at Celtic Park, because we hadn't beaten them there for so long. That was another big moment. And it's all this sort of, every result that I've sort of mentioned, it's all been a progression. It's been a gradual progression onto where we are just now. So if I'd more time to think about it, I'd maybe come up with another one, but I'll go with that since you put me on the spot.
I think the obvious one you missed was probably the Braga game at Ibrox. That was unbelievable, really. I mean,
actually, I'm going to change that. I'm going to go with Braga. So take the last one at Celtic Park and go with Braga.
The thing I remember at the Braga game was I only bought tickets game by game for European ties, and I was sort of sat in one row of the Govan rear. My dad was about 2 rows over, and then my mate and his dad were about 5 rows up. And it was the first time I think I've ran right up these stairs and just into the crowd. That third goal, that was just an unbelievable night. And I think he's given us that back, and that's the because I obviously I've been to a lot of European nights in years previous to administration, and I always felt like there was just a special feeling about that. And the last real European ties I went to were when I was 17, in the Champions League, and just being able to get that back, and I think he's brought that back, and that's the biggest thing for me. I think it's even watching the games in the telly this season, it's not been quite as good, but you still get that feeling on a Thursday, and you're like, oh, brilliant! The games are like Frankie was saying about the games being closer together. I think even watching from home this season, it's been great having the big European ties on a Thursday night, because it's been the same nerves, if not more so, because you're not there with the team. But yeah, he certainly brought some incredible moments, I think, so far, and hopefully the biggest moments still to come in the weeks and months ahead. But before we move on,
in the weeks ahead, not the months.
Before we move on, I will quickly mention, of course, we've partnered with Football Prizes. Their latest competition is for a signed Stephen Davis jersey. But you've got to be quick to take part in these competitions. All the tickets have sold out for that one. But for the next Football Prizes comps, just keep an eye on Frankie's social media channels. And you'll also get the details there about the Rangers Picks competition, which will be live ahead of the Hibs game on Wednesday. You can have a chance to win a share of £1,000. So just visit Gersnet social media channels for more info on that. The final part of tonight's show, I'll stay with you, Colin. Rumours with I've been dreading this all day, to be honest, this name. But there's rumours we've signed Namdi Ofobor on a pre-contract from Bournemouth. I actually heard Jane Lewis say it on BBC earlier, and I thought I'll remember that now, and it's just gone out of my head. But I think that's it. But he's apparently signed a pre-contract from Bournemouth midfielder, and we're apparently interested in Jack Simpson, centre half from Bournemouth. I'm not going to ask you what you know about them, because I don't think anyone. I couldn't even find any real YouTube videos or anything of the boy, the midfielder, I'll call him. But I found it quite interesting that we're looking at centre halves, because with Katic apparently close to returning, we've got Hollander, Balogun, Goldson. I can't see Edmondson staying, but I think Balogun, Hollander, and Goldson have been absolutely awesome this season. And with Katic coming back, I was quite interested to know that we were looking at a defender.
Yeah, and as you suspected, I don't know anything about them, but I think the only thing you can say is the recruitment falls into the sort of same line that we were talking about earlier on. It has improved. He made, obviously Ross Wilson's got a big part in this as well, but his initial signings were good, but the likes of Lafferty and there's a couple of others that didn't quite work out, and he's got rid of them. But year on year, he's improved the squad. So he's brought in his initial in his first window. He's brought in his initial signings, worked out the ones that he thought could cut it and could do a job for us. Got rid of those that couldn't, and it's just been a constant improvement. I think sort of leaning on what was getting said earlier on, I think there will be some movement in the summer, and that might involve Goldson, it might involve Katic, it might involve Hollander. You never know. So, we've got to be out there, with some sort of plan in terms of getting players in. But in terms of the recruitment, you would have to say overall, we've got it right. It's maybe taken a wee bit longer, but I think that goes back to how much of a basket case of a club we actually were at that time. And it also comes down to budget. He maybe had the players in mind that he wanted, but couldn't bring them in one window. So he's got to do a wee bit of shuffling about and then gradually build his squad up. But at the moment, in terms of players that are coming in, I've got every confidence in the guys that are making that decision, because more times than not, they turn out to be good signings. I mean, the window we've just had in the summer there, the players that they brought in, Rout, absolutely outstanding. Balogun, obviously we lost Katic, but I would have looked at Hollander and Goldson and thought it was pretty hard to move those. Obviously, Goldson stays in the team; he's a constant. But I thought Hollander was fine. But it really is. I mean, I still think Hollander is slightly the better defender, but there's not much between them. So he's just pulled this centre half who's just slotted in and done a great job for us. So yeah, it's part of the business. You've always got to be looking forward in terms of getting new players in. And I've got every faith that they're doing a good enough job, because the evidence is there based on what they've done previously, that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and Frankie, the other point I wanted to make on sort of recruitment in the squad as a whole, you mentioned Nathan Patterson coming on yesterday. He was excellent. And I sent you boys a clip or certain highlights from Tynecastle yesterday this morning. Kai Kennedy on loan at Raith Rovers from Rangers, and he was unbelievable. I mean, set up the first goal, I think, and then the second one, Halkett, who I actually think's a decent centre-half, had him on toast, turned him inside out and set up a goal. He also had the classic 2 sizes too big for him shirt on, which I love. But he was excellent. How important is it going to be to not only look, out with the club for new faces, but also bed in some of these young players, because it's been a long time since we've seen someone, maybe McCrory being an exception, that's come through and really made an impact at first team level.
It's extremely important. Again, I mean, we referenced the Champions League earlier, and I mean, your European squads, obviously, you've got a homegrown and a club-trained requirement within that. So we're struggling for players in that respect. I mean, Alan McGregor's one, McCrory was another, but obviously isn't at the club anymore. And after that, there isn't very many Scottish players at all. So if you can get the likes of Nathan Patterson, I mean, Scott Wright might be coming in for Aberdeen as well. Obviously, we're still linked with him, and I think it's probably a matter of time before he arrives. I mean, Kai Kennedy, I mean, I looked at that video, the Hearts game, it was excellent. I mean, there was twice, 2 of the goals he created, it was the second goal, he turned, actually, it was Michael Smith inside out, and Smith, you'll remember, he was man of the match in the game we talked about in the Scottish Cup game where Hearts demolished us last season. So it shows you that the guy's Kennedy's talented. I mean, I've followed him quite closely. I remember the last couple of years, obviously, we've been in the tournament in Qatar, we won it, and then we got invited back. To get invited back, you have to win the tournament, and obviously we did that. And Kennedy was a part of that squad in the first season. I can't remember if he was there in the second season, but he's always been a good player. Clearly, his attitude or the way he was looking at his position within the Rangers squad was maybe a bit problematic. I don't think the manager agreed with the lad's agents' thoughts in terms of maybe what kind of wage he deserved or whether how many games he should be playing or the like. Thankfully, over the last few months, it seems to me that the guy's sort of realised that he's better playing at Rangers, and I'm assuming Rangers have explained to him that the opportunities are going to be there. And to be fair, this season that they have been for the likes of Patterson, Bassey's still a young guy, and he's played as well. I mean, he's sort of felt the team recently a wee bit. It would be good to get him playing again. So I think the manager and his management team have shown that if you're good enough, you're old enough, and it's up to Kennedy to demonstrate that when he's on loan. And it's good. I mean, the Championships is as tough a league as it come, to be honest. Okay, the quality is maybe no fantastic, but if he's doing the business up against experienced players like Michael Smith and Craig Halkett and creating goals, then he can do it in the Premier League. There's no doubt about that. And this season it's been, if we do maybe have one or two disappointments, and it's maybe the fact that somebody like Jordan Jones, Greg Stewart, and even Brandon Barker to a certain extent, none of them have really managed to show themselves good enough to be relied upon in certain games, and it's probably why the likes of Ryan Kent's played as much. But Kemar Roof's played a lot of football, and maybe I think the manager might have wanted to sort of take it a bit easier with him in terms of his injury record over the last year or so. So, as I say, and I'd like to think that's what Kennedy's noticed over the last 6 months, that the pathway's there. and it's now up to him. It's up to the other guys like Leon King, Kieran Dixon to sign a new contract during the week as well. There's various guys that are obviously good enough. The management team obviously rate them in terms of wanting to give them new contracts, and it's, as I said at this comment, it's important and imperative that we get them into the squad in terms of our European aspirations.
Yeah, that's just about all we've got time for tonight. Thanks for joining us again. If you enjoy what we're doing here, please subscribe where you can, like us on social media. Previous episodes and tonight's show are available to listen to on all the usual platforms from Monday, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Castbox, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Thanks to Colin and Frankie for joining me tonight, and thanks for listening. Stay safe out there, and until next time, good night.